it is the final series in our Tamora Pierce Month, The Daughter of the Lioness, which contains Trickster's Choice and Trickster's Queen. Yay!
These were the ones I was really excited for. These were the ones I read before.
Oh my god, and that was 20 books that we've read.
Oh my goodness, it was, wasn't it?
20 books she put me through.
Alright, so
basically in the series we open with Allie. And Allie is the daughter of our good friends Alana and George.
yeah.
She's actually been mostly raised by George because Alana is still off having adventures and she comes back, but George has been the primary caregiver, and as George is also the king's spy master, you can imagine the kind of education that Allie got. And she's rather good at it and she enjoys it. Her family's kind of on her to find her place in the world, Lana especially. But because Allie wants to be a spy and it's dangerous, they're kind of like, no, you can't do that. Find something else.
Alright, lady who's a knight for a living.
That's
not dangerous.
No.
Just saying.
Not at all. And so it's kind of caused like a bit of a rift between Allie and her mother, and they just kind of can't see eye to eye on the issue. So when her mother finally comes home and she doesn't want to get into a fight with her, off she goes, and she ends up getting captured by pirates and taken as a slave to the land of Copper Isle. And you're like, well, how does this help her with her goals? But it does, because the god Cyprioth of the Copper Isles has decided that he needs her for help in his little plot. What does the plot involve? Well, a couple hundred years ago or more, the Copper Isles were ruled by the natives and they had their own thing going, and then in come the Lurin, aka the white people, and they take it over and they make most of the Raka population, is what they're called in the book, slaves. So he's a little miffed because his people are A, slaves, and B, he was kind of kicked out of power by the mother goddess and Mithros. So he's kind of been biding his time, and now the white royal bloodline and the native royal bloodline have actually mixed secretly in these two girls, and he wants them to be protected because life in the Copper Isles is pretty freaking dangerous.
And he wants he eventually wants to put one on the throne, so he says to Allie, hey, I will send you back home, like that, if you can keep these girls safe for a year.
And not only that, I will convince your father to let you be a spy. Yay, no big deal.
And I was just like,
okay, fine,
let's
whatever.
do this. Alright, no problems here.
So anyways, long story short, Allie has to get in with the conspiracy of Raka, who are working to put the girls on the throne. And she also has to keep the girls safe, which she ends up doing. They eventually come back to the city, and then Allie plays spy master for the whole rest of the book.
That's awesome.
Taking down the regency of pretty crazy people.
Oh man.
Like just off.
Not fun.
Off people. And putting one of the girls on the throne. It was originally supposed to be the older sister Sarai, but Sarai ends up falling in love and running off, and they decide to put Dove, her younger sister, on the throne, who is actually a lot more suited to the position. So it's just a really...
It's intense.
It's an intense series. But we will move on to our analysis.
Whee! So Allie! Why do we love Allie?
Allie... I don't know, Allie is like a giant metaphor for what it's like to be like a 20-something in the job market these days.
Oh, yes.
Like a giant metaphor. Before this was even like a problem, she was written, but now I'm like looking at her and I'm like, I know, I get you. I totally get you. Because she's like, hey, you guys have been training me to be a spy my whole entire life. Give me a job. And they're like, no, no,
not happening.
No job. And so you're like, but give her a job. She's totally qualified. And I'm like, no. And she's like, I just want to find my place in the world. I just want to do what makes me happy. And she has to go at a very backwards way to do it and kind of get experience. But she does it. Other female characters in the book that are a lot of fun are the two girls, Dove and Sarai. What did you think of Sarai?
I like her. And I like what Tamora Pierce did with her, and the fact that she's very set up to be like the perfect kind of queen because everybody adores her. She's very pretty, like a figurehead, and how she's very passionate about, the Rack are mistreated and this needs to change, and she's very to her age group, just like this is wrong and no. She's very socially aware, but she's kind of I'm going to relate this to Game of Thrones, Stannis in a way where, yes, birthright, eldest, figurehead, can call people to follow him, but
best person to enact policy,
not particularly good.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it was really interesting because you kind of just, in the first book, you're going along with, okay, yeah, Sarai's gonna be queen, and you're like, I guess there's really no other option, and then she just really pulls that 180 on you, and just Sarai runs off, and you're like, well, shit, you know what, now that I think about it, probably was not the best choice.
These are the only Tamora Pierce books that I had read before, and I had read them in high school, so 8, oh my god, years ago, and that I vaguely, I didn't remember the books. All I really remembered was daughter of the Lioness, and the one who's going to be queen runs away with a boy. That is all I remembered.
Wasn't it a nice surprise?
Oh, it was wonderful. But Dove, I love Dove. Dove is great because she's very backgroundy for the first book, and she's there, but she's doing her own thing, and she goes into town, she talks to everybody talks to her because she's interested in what they have to say, and
she's we'll discuss politics and economy and stuff like that, and she doesn't really have friends her age because she's just not interested in the same things they are.
Mm-hmm.
So she'll be talking to the 90-year-old man about chess or whatever you got kind of thing.
Squids.
Fish, yeah. But she's all likes to know what's going on. She'll be eavesdropping when people are having important conversations, and she's very she knows people.
Mm-hmm.
So then when Sarai runs off, people are like, well, Dove would actually probably make the better monarch anyway. And up she goes. You get the letters from home, which is really interesting because this happens in the first book when she's away, and the god's like, well, I kind of don't want you to worry, so here, I'll just send you little messages from home.
Oh, man.
And, it just breaks your heart because you're like, these people are like my family. I know you, and you, and oh my god, you're having a baby? Really?
And you're getting on, Alana's 40, and I could not. I was just no, I'm gonna die. No. Because, they're aging in kind of real time, which is weird. And
Dane is finally having her first child,
which is the
funniest fucking thing you've ever seen because, okay, childbirth, a little terrifying, pushing a watermelon out of your body, not high on your to-do list, but Dane's case, her child constantly changes
shape.
Yeah.
And gender.
So just half of Dane's body is just constantly just
having to switch because it's one moment it's a kangaroo.
Next minute she's a dolphin. And then
next moment, elephant.
And now I'm a giraffe. Hey, look. And it's just the worst horror pregnancy you've ever heard of.
And I love it because one of the letters from home, it's I guess the equivalent of a christening. And Dane's mother and father, the two gods, come down and take the baby, and they're looking at it okay, you gotta settle on one thing. So
pick a gender
and pick a
species, please.
You don't have to stay with it. You don't you can change whenever you want.
Just give 5 years down the road.
Yeah, give your parents 5 years because this shit has to stop.
And the baby just settles onto a human girl, and you're like, that's...
Oh, thank goodness. And I want a book about that baby. Because if she can,
Dane is, like, powerful. Like, Dane, those two together are just... They could practically take care of the nation themselves, okay?
But think of how powerful this kid could be. And if this kid can, like, its form is just whatever. It can change however it wants to change.
Holy crap, man.
That would be fun.
But you get Alana and Jonathan moments where, because, like, they don't know what's happened to Allie. She's just disappeared, and, like, Jonathan's, like, looking for her. Her entire extended family is just, like, searching for her. You get moments of, like, Cal and Alana sparring, because the Scam War isn't actually over.
Yeah, this book is, like, months, maybe, a year at most.
After Cal's
books.
And it's really interesting in that respect, because you never get a book that's so close to the other ones. Yeah, just a lot of just nostalgia, like more than any other book has had, you get in this book.
It's also cool how the tables have kind of turned. Like, if you look at all the other heroines and their villain, they have a defined villain. Like, Alana had Roger, Dane had Orzorn,
Kel had the Nothing Man.
In this case, I wouldn't say that Allie has, like, a specific person she's up against. She's more up against, like, an idea and a concept and, like, a system.
Yeah.
So there are people in the system, and she has to take them out. But it's not like, if I take out you, all my problems are going to be gone. And even the book goes after that, when the regents are gotten rid of, it's... Allie had to work harder than she had worked before, because now she has to clean up this entire mess and organize it and make it work.
And make sure people aren't plotting against the throne, and making sure that the laws that are passed are kind of, like, fair for everyone. And then they have this whole, like, kind of race that's been downtrodden that they now have to elevate, right? And there's a whole bunch of, like, social norms that she's going to be, like, fighting against for the rest of her life. And Dove is going to be fighting against, and... They just have, like, so much work to do.
And even to the level, like, in the last books, like every other series before, the goddess, Mithras, are very positive figures, because those are the gods that you follow. In this case, we don't like them much.
They have caused a lot of shit over here.
And so you find yourself kind of siding against
those figures.
Those figures that you've come to... like, appreciate. No. And you're just like, well, this is interesting, the fact that Allie's mother is, like, the handmaiden to the goddess, because this isn't gonna, like, cause any trouble. Oh, no, ha, ha, ha.
Oh, yeah. And you really like Kyprioth. Mm-hmm. Kyprioth is just, like, one of the funnest characters. He and Allie just...
perfect for each other.
Yeah, they were made for each other. Like, they're just constantly, like, sassing one another, and he just kind of takes her sass, where another god would probably be like, enough, mortal.
And, like, at certain points, he's like, okay, I'm gonna, like, be all, like, godly and use my, like, god powers on you. And she's like, really, we're gonna do this now? Do we have to do this now? Can we just, like, get to the chase and, like, yeah, okay, cool, you want me to do this? Why didn't you just say that before?
And, like, so he's kind of human, and then in some ways he's very kind of not, because he has these moments where he's, like, all powerful and angry, and you're like, oh, crap.
And he does a few things that aren't...
sanctioned.
Specifically kind.
Yeah.
And that's another thing about these books, is, like, the other ones kind of have that playfulness to them, and, like, the beginning of this book kind of has that, and then you hit, like, the last third, and this is for real.
Because on the throne, in the second book, you have a child king, and honestly, if this revolution is going to be successful, this child cannot live, and he doesn't. And they were putting off killing him for a very, very long time, until finally the god just had to be like,
really? This has to happen.
And so, and then Dove's brother actually has to be killed too, because he's technically would be, like, the next in line, because he's the male heir or whatever. But he's not of Raqqa blood, so it wouldn't work anyways for them. So he gets off too, and, like, they weren't going to kill him, I don't think, but he does, and it was just kind of like a necessary thing.
Yeah, and it's just...
it's heartbreaking in a way.
And the amount of death in these books. Like, so many characters die, and it's just like...
Consequences. Oh my god, we
There are
have those.
consequences now.
Oh crap.
Oh boy, okay. And like definitely we have Stormwings again because like after the Immortals,
yeah. They're just everywhere.
And there's this really kind of touching scene for me with the Stormwings, how there's a riot going down in like the square, and there are children trapped, and people are just like full on like ripping into each other, and the children are trying to climb up the fountain and trying to climb up to get out, and the Stormwings show up, and you're just like, great, Stormwings, this is about to get wonderful. And they actually start plucking the children out and moving them up top.
Because as much as Stormwings hate people,
they love children.
So, like, they're not, like, awful. Interesting, like, you have characters like Tabor, who I really enjoyed, and he was, like, actually, like, devoted to the Child King. Like, he was, like, you know, the Regents were just awful. Like, they just did not know how to take care of children, and especially, like, a Child King was just, like, way out of their league. But he was kind of the one who was, like, making sure he wasn't eating himself sick. And then when he dies, they're just, like, because it's kind of the god, like, pushing the Regents to do it. Like, he kind of gives them the nudge, and that's how the Duvon dies. So they set up, like, a magical storm, and his ship sinks. But they're, like, the one thing she says is they shouldn't have killed his king, because this guy is now, like,
really mad.
Like, just, and just sad.
And heart, like, his heart is broken, and he just sends, like, he goes to Allie, and he's like, tell me what to do, what you need me to do, and I'll do it. Because
I've had enough of this. It's just, like, it's just so interesting, like, the different reasons she has for people of just, like, different backgrounds to come together.
One of the best characters is the aunt. She's introduced in the second book. She's this elderly aunt, and she is so prim and so proper, and, like, you know, snaps at the girls all the time, like, oh, you need to dress better, oh, you need to do this, and oh, you have a reputation you have to uphold, and oh, well, you have to go do this, or oh, you have to write these letters because this, and this. And then the younger brother gets killed off. And that woman, like,
she's like, that's it.
She gets scary.
That's it.
One point she has a spear.
Do not murder this woman.
And Allie is just like, I want to be her when I grow up.
I think we all do.
She's in the final fight too.
Yeah,
like,
she lives.
Yeah, her arm gets like wounded, but she's like,
nope, still going.
I got shit to do.
Okay, so biggest love interest ever. Oh my gosh.
We've been putting this one off.
Because he is the cutest thing. He is Nawat. And basically what happens in this book is the god knows that Allie needs a little help, so he makes a wager with the crows. And he's like, I bet you can't keep Allie alive for a whole entire year. And the crows are like, gotcha. So they start teaching Allie their language so they can communicate and help spy for her and blah, 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 blah. But this one crow takes an interest in, like, humans and Allie in general, and so he turns into a human. Because that's something they can do.
Yeah.
It's really cool. They kind of tie it into legends and myths, so it's not, like, completely out of left field. There's kind of, like, a reason for it. But anyways, so he, especially for the first half of the book, goes about courting Allie interestingly. One of my favorite quotes is, like, a quote where he's like, should I mate feed you? And she's like, excuse me? Yeah, like, I'll chew up some bugs and I'll spit them in your mouth and, you know, we'll mate feed and we can be mates. And she's like, I think that would make me lose my lunch and probably not help our relationship at all. And just, like, adorable, because he doesn't quite understand things that are going on between humans, but he definitely understands that he really likes Allie. And it's just, he's kind of like that person she needs at that moment.
She refers to him as, like, he's her only real friend, because everything else is a work relationship.
And, like, yeah, he's the only one who doesn't kind of need something from her, too, right? Like, and he's just happy to have her around. And And then in the second book, he's like, I need to find my place in this world too, because I don't know whether I'm a man, I don't know whether I'm a crow, like, we need to figure through that. And so he's gone for actually most of the book.
He goes off to do stuff for, like,
the rebellion. In the outskirts, and he comes back. And, I don't know, just the way she describes him coming back, she's just like, he looked at her and he knew he was all man. And you're just like, whoa! Okay! I can feel the sparks from here. I'm just gonna take a moment. Just take a moment. Oh my gosh. She just ramped up the sexual tension in this book, and it was just like, you're like, this is probably a new adult.
Yeah, like, definitely. And it's, because, like, Alana has sex in Lioness, but it's always like...
Say it like it's a secret.
Okay, I'm not saying it's like it's a secret, but it's just like...
I know.
But the way it's just phrased in the book, it's like, and then they started sleeping together. And I'm there looking at the book. As I said, when we first started this was, wait, what? Are we, Chelsea, are we having... I guess we are. Continue. In this, it's like there is no way to question it. This happened.
This happens, and it's pretty hot.
Yeah, it's just like, whoa.
And this was before New Adult was a big thing.
Yeah.
So.
And, like, the other thing, I love how he just refers to nestlings. Like, the children are nestlings.
We must have nestlings.
And he's just like, oh, are they coming to mob us? Are they... If we have some nestlings, by the time they get here, they can mob them back. And Allie's just like, no, sweetie, it doesn't work like that.
Human babies take a little longer to mature.
So yeah, he's like just close to my heart.
Just adorable. Like, there's no way you can not love this character.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it really funny because all of Tamora Pierce's heroines, Alana, she has Pounce the cat, Dane has pretty much the entire world of animals, Kel has her sparrows, Allie gets Nawat, and then she marries him. She's the only heroine who marries her animal sidekick. That's new!
Yeah, other things worth mentioning. George comes back. George,
of course, hunts her down when he can't find her, and you're just like, it's just so touching when they...
I love George so much.
Oh, it's so adorable. And so we reach the end, and we've come pretty much full circle with Allie. And it's so interesting because you've gone through this world, you've gone through literally a generation of women in this world that's been, like, changing drastically. You had Alana, who wanted to go out and have adventures. Then you have Dane, who's just kind of, like, trying to find a place where she belongs. And she finds it, and she has to protect it. Then you have Cal, who wanted to protect all the little people. And then Allie, who's, like, looking for her place. But she's grown up with these examples of all these strong women who have just gone out and changed things. And so now she's the only character, like, and she's, like, 18, 17 by the end of the book, and she's the only one who ends up pregnant at the end of the book. It's weird. So she's just kind of, like, grown up with this culture of strong women, and she kind of believes she can do anything, and she's been inspiring the other women to do the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's holding her back, and now she's going to have her kids, and they're going to grow up in the stories of their grandmother, the Lioness, and Dane, the Wild Mage, and Calandry, Protector of the Small, and it's just going to create this, like, next generation of, like, strong women. It's really cool. So when you get to the end, it's very nostalgic. Weird. And yeah, you feel it.
Heartbreaking a little bit. There's nowhere else to go now.
So no, we'll get to that later. But anyway, so how did you feel about this book in the end? Is it as good as you remember?
It was probably better than what I remember, in the fact that now, because before I hadn't read any of the other books, so when it's like, oh, Dane's doing this, I'm just like, who's Dane? Now I know who all the characters are and what they're doing and how, like, why the name of Dane's son is meaningful, or, like, who George is.
And just how adorable her relationship with her father is.
Mm-hmm. So, like, definitely improve the books. I did read them, as I said, without reading the other books, and I liked them then too. So, if you want to use this as kind of your jumping off point, it is possible, but you kind of miss out on a bunch of things.
But yeah, so it has been a long haul, and we definitely love this book. So, we recommend you check it out.
Definitely.
And we have our conclusion review thing that we will be doing momentarily, so watch that too. Bye guys.